Who is St. Patrick? And what's his deal? I'm glad you asked. Our journey begins in the year 1522, the year Columbus sailed the ocean blue. St. Patrick, as you can tell, was a great guy. Loved the color green, obviously. I want you to know, first of all, St. Patrick didn't always look like that. Dare I say St. Patrick was cute. But our story really picks up when a man named Frodo, he is super excited to find St. Patrick. He hears these rumors of St. Patrick. He runs into this fish, and she says, "Hey, I'm Dory. I want to tell you all about St. Patrick." Frodo says, "Really? You know about St. Patrick?" And then she says, "What?" Because she has a hard time remembering things. She then remembers St. Patrick lives in kind of this remote area, this faraway area. And so Frodo's like, well, I gotta go and I gotta get my good friend, this robot that he was friends with. So he grabs Wally and they get on their two-seater motorcycle together and they just start cruising. They start taking off. They ended up crashing into this planet where St. Patrick was rumored to be. And so they're walking around and it's kind of trashy. It kind of looks like a swamp. Then St. Patrick comes out of nowhere and he's like, "Hey," and they're like, "Whoa, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Well, I live here." They're going, "Oh, this is crazy, but this is kind of like a swamp." And he says, "Hey, don't call my home a swamp, okay? It's my home." So, but then St. Patrick's nose starts getting bigger. And they're like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Oh, that's what happens when I tell a lie." He's like, "This isn't actually my home. I live kind of over there a little bit. So let's go that way." And so they start following, but they're getting kind of like nervous. Like they're getting kind of like things are kind of looking weird. And so they're trying to figure out what is this St. Patrick guy all about. And so St. Patrick turns around and he says, "Hey, have you ever seen the movie Descendants, like those three movies?" Frodo's like, "No, should we?" And St. Patrick's like, "No, you can probably pass. Like, it's not." But there's a character in there that kind of references another person. Her name's Cruella de Vil. She lives right around the corner, and so you just want to be careful. And they're like, "Oh, okay. Does that have anything to do with the life of St. Patrick?" No, but I feel like it's an important detail that he lived not too far away. And so they get in and they see St. Patrick's house when he invites them in. They see all these toys, and they start talking and coming to life, and it's really weird, but it felt like only when Frodo wasn't looking at them, they would come to life. And he's like, "Wow, St. Patrick this is a crazy house." And he goes, "Yeah, it used to belong to my Uncle Scar. He and my dad kind of got in this little fight, and so I had to like come back and take it back from my Uncle Scar, but it's a pretty good spot." So they're like, "All right, so St. Patrick, like we heard a lot of stuff about you, like what are we gonna do?" And he's like, "Obviously I'm gonna make you Lucky Charms." And they're like, "Oh my goodness." St. Patrick goes, "Do you like Lucky Charms?" Frodo and Wally look at each other like, "Yeah, like who doesn't like Lucky Charms? Yeah, we love Lucky Charms. We'd love to have some with you." So he cooks him up some Lucky Charms. They have a good meal together. And this is where things get interesting. St. Patrick goes, "I have a mission for you." He goes, "Your mission, if you choose to accept it, I want you to go back to where you came from. And I want you just to turn everything green. Just like get a bunch of green stuff together." And they're like, "Okay, I think we can do that." And they go, "For how long?" And he's like, "Well, just one day out of the year." And they're like, "Really? Like one day out of the year? Like you don't want this to be a big thing?" And he was like, "No, it will be a big thing. Just like one day, I just want things to be green." So Wally starts taking notes and he's like, "What kind of things do you want to be green?" And he's like, "I don't know, like t-shirts and hats maybe." He's like, "But there's something really, really important." And they go, "Okay, what is it?" "Anything. Like we will do this, St. Patrick." He's like, in the first Frozen movie when like the trolls had more of like a spotlight feature in there and they had their own song and everything. Yeah, like we know about that. Like we love the movie Frozen. Frozen 2 was actually better than the first one. St. Patrick's like, "Yeah, but we're not here to debate that right now. Those trolls, they gave me some inspiration on some." So then he whistles. He whistles to the back. Around the corner comes this candlestick that is just talking and singing and dancing. And then like a bookshelf comes over and then other furniture pieces. And they just say like, "Hey, be our guest." And then they take off the top. And then on this plate, St. Patrick holds it up. "Hey, do you know what this is?" And they're like, "No, we don't." And they're like, "It's a shamrock." And they're like, "What does it do?" And he's like, "I don't know." He's like, "I want you, when you go back and make everything green, I have this vision of people drinking this in milkshake form." And Frodo's like, "I can see it." And Wally's like, "I'm having some trouble." St. Patrick goes, "I could see like lines of people, like in kind of like a drive-through, like pulling up, finding these shamrock shakes." And Frodo goes, "Yeah, like let's do this. Like that's what we should, one day a year." St. Patrick goes, "Well, I mean like the shakes could be more of a seasonal thing. Sure, yeah, like let's try this one day where everything's green." And so they get back on their unicycle, ride back, and they say, "Hey everyone, like we're gonna turn things green and we're gonna make some shamrock shakes." And everyone's like, Okay, what day do you want to do that? And they're like, I don't know, how about like in March sometime? And everyone's like, yeah, like let's totally put it on the calendar. Ever since, we celebrate St. Patrick, the one who brought us the Shamrock Shake amongst so many other things that are green for a day. We celebrate. I'm glad that you got to take a moment to just kind of hear into the story of St. Patrick. You're welcome and enjoy your day.